One thing we all know that is we can build magical applications with the help of openai APIs, applications that can interact with human language and provide human language like response. Recently I uploaded a video titled function calling with openai, where we were explored how we can build and utilize GPT model to respond to user prompts. And in cases where GPT model lacks information, GPT model doesn't know what to respond, because there are chance that user is asking about current data and GPT model doesn't know about that. In those cases, we were using function calling to retrieve the appropriate parameters from the prompt so that we can pass them to already built functions and APIs in our software to make our application so much better. So this is what we were doing in function calling. Now let's see how we can use assistant APIs to do more advanced things. The biggest problem for developers when OpenAI APIs were first introduced, when users interact with the AI assistant they have built, they need to manage the state of all the conversation that user is having with that assistant. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So this is their assistant and user is going to ask some sort of question. So you have this chat history. Now to manage the state of all these messages, you need to do hard work. Okay, you need to do extra work. For example, you need to store all this conversation in some sort of database, and whenever user visit again, you're going to provide this information. So this is the kind of thing which we want to avoid. And how these new assistant API is going to help us. So first we are going to create an assistant like we do as usual. We're going to provide name to that assistant. Another thing will be description, and there are three optional thing. Okay, so these are new to OpenAI assistant APIs. Okay, so very first thing is code interpreter. So what this code interpreter does, this code interpreter going to solve mathematical problem and problem related to programming. Okay, and second thing we have is retrievals. So we can pass our own knowledge, we can pass our own document along with this name and description. And third thing we have is function calling. Okay, we can define our own function. So if user asks something that GPT model doesn't know, then then we can extract few parameters from that prompt and we can pass that information to our own function or APIs, and we can return result to user. So these are three optional thing along with name and description. So let me tell you how everything work together. Whenever user interact with assistant, it is going to create a thread and there could be multiple thread. Whenever user asks something, so user write this prompt, so this request is sent to the runs. Okay, so what this runs does, this runs is actually this is the third component here. So this runs is pair of request and response. Okay, so we have sent some sort of request and it is going to resolve this request and will provide appropriate output. Okay, so it is going to call OpenAI APIs. We are not actually passing this prompt, we are passing this entire thread. Okay, so you might have seen this in chat GPT. Whenever you ask something to chat GPT knows what you have asked and he can use that information later. So that is why we are passing this entire thread to this runs, and this thread is going to return us response. So we have this response message here. Whenever user ask another prompt, whenever user ask this another question, so this entire thread is passed to another runs, and this runs going to return us response, and this runs can have series of step. Okay, now the thing with this runs is that it is not going to use one particular thing, it can provide response by using multiple thing. Okay, there are chance that first it is using the code interpreter, then it is impending that thing to the function calling. So we are getting response from two different thing. Okay, one response from two different things. So this is how this runs going to work. There are two ways we can create, configure and interact with OpenAI Assistant. We can use OpenAI Playground or we can use OpenAI APIs, and they are interchangeable. If you are creating assistant using OpenAI Playground, then you can use that same assistant in OpenAI APIs. And if you have created assistant using OpenAI APIs, you can test that assistant in OpenAI Playground. And let's see how we can create assistant here. So in sidebar you will find these assistants. Here you will see list of all the assistant you have created, and in order to create new assistant you can click this button create, and these are all the configuration we have already discussed. You need to pass the name, instructions and the models. You can select any model you want and the tools. Okay, and these tools help us to improvise the response. So I have already created one assistant. Let's see how it works and how we can improvise it. So this is the assistant weather report, and it is going to answer queries related to the weather in short statements. And if you click this test button, it will head over to platform playground. So this is platform playground, and here we have list of all the assistant we have created. I already talked about the different components of assistants API. We have three component. One is assistant itself, another is thread. Okay, so this is one thread open in our platform, open in our playground. Okay, and the third component is runs. Okay, so let's see, let's start by asking very simple question. Okay, let's ask something like, what are different weather conditions? When I click this button add and runs, it is going to pass this entire thread to the runs component. Okay, when you click this add and runs, and you can see all the logs here in runs, so it is passing this entire thread to this runs. And when I click this clear button, it is going to remove this thread. Okay, we'll see all these steps using the APIs when we deal with code. Okay, so it is returning me this answer. Different weather condition include, these are different weather condition. Now let's ask something which this model is not aware of. Okay, so let me ask a different question. Let's say, tell me current weather in New Delhi, because this model do not have current information. When I click this add and run, it is going to return response. Let's wait. So it is returning us, sorry, as an AI model I don't have real-time capabilities, so we can improvise this response. What we can do, we can use any of these tool. We can pass some sort of file if we have current data, or we can use function calling. Okay, I have a dedicated video on function calling, but let's see how function calling work. So in function calling, we are going to define a function, and our model going to extract those parameters which are relevant for us, and we can fire that function, or we can say we can dispatch that function from our software. Let me give you one example. In previous video we have seen this example. Here we have defined this function get current weather. So let's copy this definition. Here we can paste this definition, click save. Now if I ask similar question, tell me current weather in New Delhi, when I click add and run, this time as you can see, our model is saying that we need to dispatch this function get current weather, because we are not building any software, so I do not have implementation of this function. But if you are, for example, you want to create a weather application where user can type something and it is going to return us response, in that case you can implement this function. Okay, so this is how assistant APIs work. But this is the broad explanation of assistant API. Let's see how they actually work with the help of coding examples. First let's see what this JavaScript code is doing, then we will understand each individual piece. Okay, so in order to run this file, type node AI assistance, name of the file. As you can see, it is doing everything in steps. Okay, so first it is creating the assistant, then it is creating thread, then it is adding message to the thread. and it is waiting for the response. Okay, and once we have response, it is displaying that response. And here what it is doing, it is also displaying this code, because we have enabled the code interpreter tool while we are creating this assistant. Here what we are doing, we are creating Python tutor, and this code interpreter tool is enabled. That is why it was creating that code. Obviously we can create we can display that response in nicer way if we are building any application. Okay, so first what we have did, we have created this assistant, and I have included all the endpoints in this readme file. Okay, and okay, so first we have created the assistant like we did in the playground. Okay, once we have assistant, what we can do, we can get that assistant id. So that is why I have defined this assistant id on the top, and then I have assigned that assistant id to this variable, and then we are going to create the thread. Now these first four steps are making post request because they are generating something, and last two steps are making get request, as you can see in this repository. Okay, so in this second step we are creating a thread, and in third step what we are doing, we are adding message to the thread with the help of thread id, and in fourth step we are running that assistant by passing thread id and the assistant id, and finally we are waiting for the response. Once we have response, we are displaying that response by making a get request to this endpoint. Okay, so all these examples are there in this repository. You can check out that repository. And finally we are displaying so finally we are getting this data from this response, and we are displaying this data. So this is how everything work together. Now let's see that Python file as well, and let's run this Python file. So let me copy that API key. Okay, so I can run Python file by using this. As you can see, it is also doing the similar thing. So this is how we can implement all these steps.